Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going In Raw, the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to. On today's episode, we are answering your questions. That's right, it's another Ask Going In Raw. We're going to be talking about the Bloodline. We're going to be talking about Bray Wyatt. We're going to be talking about NXT, MJF. I'm just looking through all the questions here. And then at the very end, we'll take them all. We're going to speed round all the ones that we didn't answer properly in longer form. So that's what's going on today. Next Wednesday, of course, we're doing the exact same thing. It's our normal Wednesday routine now, is doing this Ask Going In Raw. And if you want to get your question, possibly like a headline type question, we read your name and we say what your question is, you can attempt to do that at the Patreon, patreon.com/Stephen Larson, $5 and up. Or for YouTube channel members, all you got to do is click join, and then you'll have access to the questions thread for Wednesday, and then also for the recap shows as well. You also get access to participating in the Big Red Predictions WrestleMania Challenge coming up April 1st and 2nd for, of course, WrestleMania. Right now, Angelic Wolf is our Big Red Predictions Challenge winner from AEW Revolution. Mania is around the corner. We're doing it again. I'm going to see if Angelic Wolf will be able to hold on to that Big Red Predictions Challenge. Ooh, that's a tough task.
Yes, that is a tall task considering the number of matches on the Mania card, the number of participants that we had. Just for Revolution, I'm sure it's only going to increase. So best of luck to everybody that's going to take part in it for WrestleMania. Best of luck to Angelic Wolf defending that title. And I'm just hoping this month I get close.
Oh, yeah.
Get close to being in contention. The last two times we've done it, nowhere close.
It was just, I at least I can, hang my hat on having beat you and Enforcer this last time.
Yeah,
but
lost two times because you were one of the three that got the extra bonus point coming out.
I know. As soon as we open it up to everybody else, I start dominating Al. But doesn't matter.
It's because you do good on the prop bets. That's what it is.
Yeah, man. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You did really well booking your first wrestling show the other day, Lars. Because yesterday, I wanted to shout out, we had a huge audience.
We did.
For my GM. We're going to put up like a bunch of that stuff. I don't know if we're going to put it up at Friendo Wrestling or if we're going to put it up on, like, I've got a gaming channel just sort of waiting to put up nothing but gaming stuff. Maybe I don't know where we're going to do it, but we're going to put up that stuff officially somewhere. But it was a lot of fun. So thanks everybody for hanging out with us yesterday for that, because that was cool. Yeah, man, let's go ahead and dive in. What's our first question today?
This first question is from Lahue FTW. Apologies, got the name wrong.
Lahue,
could be Lahue. The question is, do you think the Bloodline story is falling victim to pacing? Sammy's story is over, but would have been more impactful for it to conclude with a loss at Mania instead of introducing a new contender so close to WrestleMania. What say you, Steve, here?
Well, we talked about this pretty extensively yesterday. I think it has to do, number one, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that it's fallen victim kind of to anything. I think that WrestleMania is going to be huge. I think it's going to be massive. I think that expectations have been built up so high because of the intrigue that we've been witness to over the past 3 or 4 months or whatever, with the tension within the group and this nail-biting story every single week. That's gone now. That's missing. And I do think that there is something to be said for them having executed that so perfectly in the first place. But once Elimination Chamber went down, where Sammy and Roman had their blow-off, basically, at that point, once Sammy's out of the Bloodline, a lot of the tension just sort of got, let out because of what happened at Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber. That story beat had to come up eventually. Now, I do kind of take issue with how some of the story has played out since then, because I feel like some of the execution and the staging of how it was before has gone away a little bit. For example, the way the big Jey Uso turn on Sammy went down and the way that was staged, I feel like that could have been done a little bit better. But the tension between Sammy, Jey, and Roman was so tight and it was so intriguing that couldn't sustain because you need a new story beat. You have to to bring things to its natural conclusion. If they had kept that going, now we'd be asking the question, are they extending this too long? So I think that Mania is going to be huge. I think that right now what's happening is just some more necessary story beats to get us there. So I don't know. Could you call it pacing? I don't know, but it seems it is a little bit. It has cooled off a little bit on the road to WrestleMania, but I kind of expected, especially over the next 2 or 3 weeks leading into Mania, for it to heat up quite a bit more. Kevin Owens was left laying in a puddle of his own vomit, and Sami Zayn was nowhere to be found. Roman's going to be showing up probably, I would suspect, on more episodes of the weekly programming leading up to WrestleMania
on Monday. Let's see if that actually happens.
Right, he was because he was advertised for SmackDown on Friday as well. And so yeah, I don't know. I think there's ebbs and flows to every story. The idea of Sammy getting into the Bloodline in the first place was fraught with tension. He was in there, and then you get to coast for a little while, and you see some stuff simmering, but then the tension really starts to kick up a lot more. We've seen that already. So now I think we're in a lull, and it's going to kick back up over the next couple of weeks.
I wonder if this cooling, if you will, has to do with the fact that I think given how the story has played out, it would make sense. It would be logical. It would probably be a satisfying conclusion if some member, either current or past, of the Bloodline were to be the one to topple Roman. Mm-hmm. And when Sammy was super hot, super over, people were behind him to be that person, even though that's not really his story.
Right, yeah.
If anybody in the Bloodline should be the one to topple Roman, it is Jey Uso, and nobody else. And if Jey was in a position to be that person, I think this story would still have the same level of intrigue that it did in the months prior. But since a lot of the as you mentioned, the intrigue, the tension that was going with the Bloodline story has subsided because Sammy's arc with Roman has concluded. Now it just feels like, for the most part, inevitable. When we know Sammy and Kevin Owens are going to take on the Usos at WrestleMania. We know Cody is probably going to beat Roman at Mania for the belts. There's just not that level of tension. Like, oh, what is going to happen next?
Yeah, right.
It seems at this point they've transitioned from telling a deeply textured, rich, layered story to, all right, now this has got to be settled in a wrestling ring.
Mm-hmm.
And as we mentioned on the Raw recap, there's still a bit of a disconnect, at least in terms of WWE maybe does things in terms of how, and we'll talk about this more in the next question because this is what the next question is all about. How to translate certain storytelling mechanics to the tropes of professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a lot of the more interesting aspects of the story were just kind of settled at Elimination Chamber. Now, okay, we got to build to this match that we want, WWE wants at WrestleMania between Cody and Roman, and we're putting all our energy behind that. So it's just a matter of them kind of veering off from the Bloodline story as we knew it for several months to Cody and Roman, trying to work Cody into that story. I guess that's the best they thought they could, having him kind of recruit Sammy and Kevin Owens to kind of be allies to take out the Bloodline. It just doesn't feel nearly as organic as everything that preceded it. And Sammy, up until Elimination Chamber, his story was so incredibly over. He was so incredibly over.
Yeah.
And even though Cody is incredibly over, I think kind of writ large, maybe more than Sammy was. Sammy was still kind of the heart and soul of that story. Mm-hmm. He was the character that a lot of people empathized with. Mm-hmm. And to not see him as involved, I don't know, maybe from some people's perspective, it's like, just isn't the same now.
I don't think, Sammy was clearly more over than Cody is now. Cody is over. Look, it's one of those things where, and some people I've heard, and we've talked about this before compared to Daniel Bryan, and it's not that. It's not Daniel Bryan 2014. It's not that, because people do really like Cody. Like I went back and watched his Winded promo from the other day, and he is still over. But just the fact that we've lived with the Sammy J. Roman storyline for so long, He was much more over in an organic way as well, as you say. But I've never personally felt that Sammy's story was to beat Roman. I've never felt that Jay's story was to beat Roman. I think that they both, more so Jay, need to be, mainly Jay, needs to be integral in Roman's downfall.
The case for Jay to beat Roman is that you could say, well, you look at Jay and he's like, oh, he's had the tag title for 600 days. He's been wildly successful as a member of Bloodline, but at what it cost? Roman took everything from him. Everything.
Yeah.
Jay's having a wildly successful career, but as a man, he is absolutely broken.
Yeah.
And in that sense, who better to take the thing that matters most to Roman than Jay?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess a case could be made for that. I could look at the story a little closer and maybe come up with a counter to that. But I mean, no, it's a great point. So yeah, I don't know. I think that like with any story, and it's funny because now we sit here talking about it, you could think of any great TV show and think about peaks and valleys. There are episodes that run that are, rife with tension. And then there's always going to be a little bit of a lull. And then as things get set up again, well, with weekly wrestling, you get, however many minutes of a segment as opposed to a full 45-minute episode of a TV show that's dedicated exclusively to that one story. Wrestling's a little bit different. You got to tell a little bit different. And so maybe it's a victim of its own ambition, or maybe it's just, this is natural lull in the story. You have to do this kind of stuff. Now, one thing that I mentioned on Monday as well is you also can't predict, contractually, was Roman Reigns supposed to be there on Friday? Would there have been a different story beat? Has this happened before where, Roman probably they were expecting to have him and they were expecting to tell a big story beat and then they didn't. We also don't know, backstage what's going on with, it's like when you have a whole group of actors to film 10 weeks, for 10 weeks of a season of television or however long that goes, 3 months or whatever it is. That's a bit different than, week to week, you expect somebody to show up and then for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. They have to re-examine where they're going to use Roman's contractual obligations. That also could play into the Bloodline stuff. But I mean, look, they've got a guy in Cody Rhodes whose return was huge. His first return to WWE was huge. Then he had this amazing moment with the Peck, and then he leaves, and his second return is huge. If you're WWE, you roll with this story. You roll with Cody Rhodes. You do. And the crowd loves him.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what you do. And you find a way, for Sami Zayn, who really, I don't think really should have been the guy to dethrone Roman anyways. You roll with him. And given that his history within the Bloodline more had to do with Jey Uso than it did with Roman Reigns, that's the story at WrestleMania as well. I mean, a case could be made. Maybe you just say, screw the tag titles and do a solo bout between Sami and Jey. I don't know. But no, I don't know. You got the tag titles in there. It's family versus family. I think it's kind of perfect. I think the story's kind of perfect. We're just in a lull of tension right now, which I think they probably could have executed a bit better than they're doing right now. But that's just because the bar has been set so high and the ambition was so great. Yeah.
Again, it's a situation, and this is what the whole next question is about. Are there limits to wrestling storytelling to make it believable that this whole thing can and should be settled in a wrestling match? And especially when you talk about Jey and Sami, there's so much going on there that this seems to settling it in the ring. This seems inadequate, underwhelming. There's so much more going on there than to see them just fight over it.
I'm gonna push to see what they do over the next couple of weeks. I think they can get us to the point where we really do.
Oh, they could. I'm just saying, based on what we've seen so far. Where Jey turns on him, Sami hasn't responded at all. So we might as well get to this next question because it kind of dovetails with this conversation we're having now. Ty Moore asked, you mentioned with Bray how his storylines can only go so far before it's too much because in the end it will involve running ropes. What is the line before a storyline can't really end with just running ropes? So I guess can we qualify wrestling storylines to the extent that we can say, all right, this is the incident, the moment, the fulcrum, which it transcends beyond the tropes of wrestling storytelling into something much richer.
Boy, are you looking for like? Yeah, go ahead.
So I thought of a couple examples. I was out in the garage lifting weights. I got the mind to going.
Yeah,
and so I thought of two stories that I generally regard as some of the great stories in wrestling history. That one definitely made sense to end in a wrestling match, and the second you could say, okay, it makes sense to end in a fight.
Okay.
First one that made all the sense in the world. In fact, if it didn't end in a wrestling match, it would make no sense, and that's the story of Daniel Bryan rising up, getting super over the Yes movement.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The whole point of that story is him proving that he's not a B+ player.
Yeah.
And to prove that, he kind of needs to win the title.
Yeah.
That needed to be settled in the ring because that story is about competition and proving that he is worthy of being the guy. And then I thought about the Mega Powers.
Yeah.
And how they fell apart. It made sense for them to fight.
Yeah.
Now you could say, should they be running ropes and dropping leg drops, or should they be fighting?
Yeah.
That's kind of splitting hairs, I would think.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm trying to think.
It's still fisticuffs of some
exactly. And the way they booked the Gargano Ciampa stuff at NXT when they started their series of matches, none of them were a standard match.
Yeah, right.
It was fights.
Yeah.
That happened to take place during a wrestling show.
I got an example. Back in, what was it, 2001, 2002, 2001, I guess. Ownership over WWE. There's no way no way. It's like a Survivor Series and all that kind of shit. The Invasion. There's no way that should have been in the courtrooms.
Well, it's sort of like Eddie and Ray in the ladder match over custody of Dom. That
oh my God! No, that is a great point. That's probably tops. Custody of a child in a ladder match. No, that's definitely crossing a line right there. Yeah.
I mean, those are obvious ones, I think. But in terms of a storyline like the Bloodline one, that's grounded in the reality that's presented by WWE, they don't take any leaps of logic like, hey, custody of a child could be won via ladder match,
Yeah.
That's a huge leap of logic. Same with ownership of a company.
I mean, because the genesis of this question, it's Bray Wyatt we're talking about here, right? Yeah. And I'll be honest, like the Fiend itself, he shouldn't be running ropes. He shouldn't. I don't think the Fiend actually literally in matches ran very many ropes. He was more of a stalk a guy, break his neck, stick his hand down his throat.
Now, I don't remember offhand Fiend doing the fun splash, but that's a regular move in Bray Wyatt's arsenal.
Yeah, he does. Look, he does wrestling moves, but the silliness.
Part of that would be running the ropes, so that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. They weren't putting on any Matt Classics, I don't think. No LaBelle locks. But Bray Wyatt stuff is interesting because you think about how wonderfully, the Randy Orton 2017 stuff was, and all the dynamic. Talk about tension. The stuff with Luke Harper and Randy Orton. And I know you and I both felt that they missed a couple story beats between Randy Orton being totally cool with him and then all of a sudden Randy Orton burning his house down. Yeah. He had infiltrated and then he burned the house down. There really should have been some additional story beats in there. Yeah. But it was really compelling stuff. And for them, and they did, was it Bray and Orton in the cinematic match that we were there for? That was Bray and Orton.
House of Horrors match, whatever.
Right, the House of Horrors match. I feel like the House of Horrors match is kind of how you should probably settle a Bray Wyatt feud. It's just, it lends itself to a short film, everything that he does. You stage it as a play in front of everybody. And you can add stuff like, for example, Orton versus Harper to determine who's going to be Bray Wyatt's number one guy or whatever. You can have wrestling matches that happen along the way. But the blow off being in a match where there's a bunch of bugs projected onto the mat, it's not compelling in the least.
No, especially when Bray Wyatt promised demonic powers.
Right, and you think that. And that's the thing about the Cena stuff is that the Firefly Funhouse was a brilliant piece of wrestling film. It really was. And so, Bray Wyatt, that's why we had that conversation about Bray Wyatt. There was such an in-depth conversation about Bray Wyatt yesterday. The clip is on the Friendo Club Wrestling channel right now. is that there is a distinct line that they need to figure out, because having silly gimmick matches like the Mountain Dew one, it's not gonna be a satisfying thing, even if you have Uncle Howdy up there doing a silly splash onto LA Knight and it's filmed improperly. And
yeah, you see he missed LA Knight by a good 3 feet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the Bloodline story and Bray Wyatt stuff are obviously two drastically different approaches to stories, different storytelling, different stories entirely.
Yeah.
But, you can make the argument that both kind of push the limits of how matches can lead to satisfying conclusions of storylines.
Yeah.
More so Bray, but, the argument could be there that given how rich the Bloodline story is, settling it in a wrestling ring is like, okay, well, yeah, all right. But Bray stuff, yeah, like, I always go back to Hell in a Cell against Seth Rollins. There was a very specific point they were trying to make with Bray Wyatt at the time as The Fiend. This is his second match as The Fiend after he beat Finn at SummerSlam.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And they were trying to make him a horror movie villain.
You're right, yeah.
And Seth was realizing as the match was going on, no matter what he threw at him, the Fiend was getting back up. So he had to resort to more drastic and more violent ways of keeping him down. Got to the point where it was attempted murder, and the ref's like, okay, this is going too far. This has to stop. Which in any sort of real world scenario makes all the sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But since as wrestling fans, we're conditioned for matches to play, especially Hell in a Cell matches, to play out a certain way where there's, by the nature of the rules of the match, there's no DQ. You don't just stop the match. It just the nature and architecture of wrestling storytelling runs counter to what they were trying to accomplish with that. So then you have people saying, oh, this is awful. Why do you have this match end with referee stoppage when this just doesn't happen, even though it happened the year prior in Hell in a Cell?
Yeah.
This sucks. So it's a situation where they're trying to make efforts to build a character up in The Fiend to be a scary motherfucker.
Yeah, right.
And because that approach to telling that story ran counter to how we are used to wrestling happening, then there was that disconnect there.
Yeah, right.
There was that dissonance, and people are like, this sucks.
Yeah, and it went to, I thought that was a situation where, to the larger wrestling audience, it went too far, and it became, not a wrestling thing anymore. The Bray Wyatt, one of the Bray Wyatt things that worked really well, like within the context of wrestling ring, and again, they rushed the ending a bit, but it was a decent ending, was the Daniel Bryan stuff, when he had to join the Wyatt family. I thought Bray Wyatt worked really well as a cult leader, because cults are, wrestling has factions. And within the faction, you see that now with the Bloodline, obviously. And within factions, you can have dissent. You can have people trying to usurp power. And I thought that the Wyatt family, I thought, was a really, again, untapped. You also have to wonder just how much of it, just how much of Bray's vision for this stuff. For all we know, Bray Wyatt has just amazing ideas for how to blend wrestling and his horror movie ideas. And it's just maybe the people above him. That was kind of my theory on Vince all those years, was that Vince was like, you just look, man, you can only go so far. At the end of the day, this is pro wrestling and you got to run ropes. And maybe Bray Wyatt was like, well, yeah, but if you give me the creative liberty to do this, because I really appreciated that when the Fiend was done with people, or Bray Wyatt was done with people, they would change. Finn had a heel turn. Seth had a heel turn. Yeah. They would fundamentally change. I always loved that idea. And I thought that if Vince McMahon had the same faith in Bray Wyatt that he did in, like, for example, The Undertaker, but I think with Bray Wyatt, it would take a much bigger leap of faith to be like, okay, we're going to let you play with the biggest toys we have. And it's kind of a risk, and it's not what Vince McMahon knows as wrestling. And I think it went against his very sort of being to do that.
I'll play devil's advocate here. I don't know what the situation is, but I guess the counter to that would be someone who has a wealth of ideas, maybe even great ideas, but doesn't know exactly how to put it all together. The first example that pops in my mind is Richard Kelly, director of Donnie Darko.
Sure, yeah.
Where you see that movie apparently played at Sundance. I think a distributor got the rights to it and they re-edited it.
Yeah, right.
And what was released is a really good movie, the initial version.
Yeah.
You see the director's cut, and it's a fundamentally different film and nowhere near as good.
Yeah.
You got a movie like Southland Tales, which is an ambitious mess, to say the least.
Yeah.
Is there some interesting ideas in there? Sure. Are they buried under a bunch of crap? Yeah.
Yeah.
And at no point has Richard Kelly, as a filmmaker, been able to replicate the success he had with Donnie Darko after it was re-edited.
Right. Yeah.
And so since we don't know the creative process involving Bray whatsoever, we don't know of a situation where he could be basically a wrestling auteur, but his vision, like the wrestling Orson Welles, someone who's got brilliant ideas and can put together, could change the very language of wrestling storytelling as you know it, if only someone would give him a chance. Or it could be a situation where he's got such great ideas, but hasn't found a way to fit everything together in a way that's cohesive. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know. What we've seen so far with what's going on now that Triple H is in charge, it hasn't really helped answer that question a whole lot.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of the same habits. It
plays into that theory that Bray Wyatt might be the Richard Kelly of wrestling. Which, by the way, he has not done a movie since The Box.
That was a long time ago.
It was 2009.
Yeah.
That's
Has he done
nuts.
any TV or anything?
No, he did. He produced one movie after this, some goofy ass movie called Operation Endgame, which I think has Zach Galifianakis in it and like Ellen Barkin and who's like Rob Corddry. That's weird. But he just produced that one. It's got Lugal in it.
Yeah.
No, that's entirely possible, and it might be probable given that we were like, oh man, Bray Wyatt with Triple H letting him do what he's gonna do. Maybe even for Triple H, because Triple H, his mentor is Vince McMahon. It's not like Triple H is rewriting wrestling. He's just being more logical about shit because Vince stopped being that. Yeah. Maybe that's the case. Maybe with Bray, it's like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's entirely possible that even Bray hasn't figured out that particular algorithm. But maybe we'll do something. Maybe he'll do something cool at WrestleMania. I don't know. So much of his ideas are so cool, and so much of his presentation is great. But you got to stick the landing at some point. I know.
You
have to stick the landing.
If you want people to buy into what you're doing, you have to stick the landing more often than not.
I get the feeling that maybe he just needs to take it back to a little bit of simplicity. Like, hey, let's tell a story where it totally is normal to run ropes at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to do.
Yeah.
Man, let's go ahead and pay some bills, Larson. What do you say?
All right. Let's take a quick break here, friendos. This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by BetterHelp. Steve, we all grow and change as we go through life, and getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process. And I thought I had a pretty good grasp on who Larson was until I hit my mid-20s. It was around that time that I was feeling really overwhelmed by life and started dealing with severe anxiety. Eventually got to the point where I had to go to therapy. And while it took me a few times to find someone I felt comfortable talking to, once I did, I learned some positive coping skills that helped me better manage my anxiety.
Therapy is a way to deepen your understanding and self-awareness, and BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can help you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try.
BetterHelp is completely online and is designed to be suited to your schedule, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. All you got to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist. So discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/raw today and get 10% off your first month.
That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/raw. Before we continue with these questions, we did get a super chat right here on the YouTube from Alex Silva. Says, I feel like Sammy's going to challenge the Usos for the belts and then ask Kevin Owens to be his partner, and Kevin Owens will still say no. It's probably going to lead to Mania if he will. If will he or won't he show up to the tag match with Sammy? I think that's a possibility. That's one way to get a huge pop.
Yeah.
Is he's losing and then
like they're going to nail the moments at WrestleMania. I don't have much doubt about that.
The go homes lately under Triple H have been pretty good too.
Yeah, and there's so much history and story to work with.
Yeah,
that even if they kind of fumble the end, they'll nail the moments at WrestleMania because there's a lot they can reference. There's
they kind of write themselves. Yeah.
We got a question here from Patrick Kennedy. Patrick asks, what are the odds that we see Finn Balor as world champion again? I feel like he'd be great. With only a one-day reign as the first Universal Champion, needs another shot. Steven, one word. Give me one word. What are the odds that Finn Balor becomes a world champion again?
Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah, no, I think that that they're going to split the titles after Mania. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they're going to do it. My idea of Cody just burning himself out and having to defend on both Raw and SmackDown, like splitting the titles.
He actually had a quote about that recently where he said he's in favor of splitting the titles.
Yeah.
And he says basically it's up to management to do it.
Yeah, he says he doesn't want to be put in a position where either him or Roman have to decide which one they want, which is his way of saying, management should do it. But I like the idea that it's like, hey, look, we're not going to take one of these titles from you because you won them both. But we are going to split them. There's going to be separate number one contenders on both shows, and you're going to be defending them as if you're two people. And then Cody Rhodes goes through Rawgate, and you get two Cody Rhodeses, and I'm very happy about that.
Talk about a nightmare.
So once they are split, dude, here's the thing. All signs point to Triple H loving the Judgment Day, and they are getting Finn Balor. They are getting so over with the crowd. They love Rhea Ripley. They hate Dominic Mysterio. They get the big reactions. And I think that once you split the titles, Finn Balor rocking that WWE title or the Universal title and maybe making the strap purple and Rhea Ripley with the SmackDown women's title. I think that could be really cool shit right there, man. I think that could be really, really good. And I could totally see it happening. Yeah.
And I hope it does happen. There was that spell where they just booked Finn as generic smiling babyface.
Oh God, the entirety of his main roster run was
for the most part
that.
Yeah. And they went to NXT and had an opportunity kind of to reinvent himself. There was elements of Prince Devitt, some of his work in New Japan there, but it wasn't like he was leaning exclusively on his past.
We talked about that as well recently. Yeah. He said that the plan was to do the way he is now, to do that in NXT, and then like COVID or whatever fucked it up.
Yeah. So seeing the work he's doing now, reinventing his character, there's elements again of Prince Devitt, but it's not just that,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's a different kind of scumbag now than he was, as leader of Bullet Club.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him cussing anybody out at press conferences yet.
Right.
Maybe that's to come. I don't know.
There's no footage of him at restaurants chopping people,
No. He's not sitting on someone's back reading a newspaper.
that would be a good one.
That's pretty great.
You could do that.
So yeah, I hope he gets another opportunity to run as champion. He's been putting in some awesome work. Mm-hmm. Judgment Day is getting super over. The chemistry between all the members is great.
Yeah.
So it would be a bummer if they didn't give him another shot. But the talent, the roster's so deep. There's like 6 people on the roster. You're like, man, I wish they'd get a run with the title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, it's just I'm just hoping that Finn doesn't get kind of lost in the shuffle of the upper mid card as he has for years seemingly, and not get another title run.
I mean, it is funny. In my opinion, I think you could consider his character as being so drastically different than what we had before that it's kind of a clean slate situation, But no, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, look at Raw. You got Seth. Is Kevin Owens technically Raw? He's Raw. And Sammy was SmackDown. Yeah. So you got Seth. You got Kevin Owens.
You got Bobby Lashley.
You got Bobby Lashley.
You got Finn.
You might have Jay White coming up here soon. I don't know. Is the OC? The OC's there, so AJ's always
AJ
when he comes back.
I mean,
Edge might want to do that last thing, but he did get stacked at WrestleMania.
Austin Theory, if he beats Cena, is going to be top title opportunity. And then on Raw, you got Cody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So, you still have Cody there. Yeah. So it might be a while. And right now they're going through this thing where they like really long title runs. So I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I feel like when Cody wins, unless he gets hurt, he's going to have that belt for a while.
I think you're probably right about that, yeah.
So Judgment Day probably needs to move to SmackDown. Which, if Rhea wins the title, it's probably going to happen.
It's a big possibility there, yeah.
Yep. Got a question here from Shavon. It says, what do you guys think will be the best way to call up Carmelo Hayes, the mid-card guy in the Hurt Business, or have him be the new leader of Hit Row?
Oh, no. The last one, no. Keep him far away from Hit Row. No.
Yeah.
No. There was that picture that MVP put out of Carmelo, MVP, Street Profits and Amos.
That was so good.
Now, I would not want them to call it the Hurt Business because there's nobody there besides MVP that's Hurt Business. Start up a new faction. How about MVP starts up that faction, and maybe Bobby Lashley gets back together with the Hurt Business guys on his own. But I would love him to come in and be the centerpiece, the main event guy of a new MVP faction. I think that'd be awesome. That'd be great with Amos there.
I can't disagree with any of that. Yeah, I mean, Carmelo Hayes is a foundational piece.
Absolutely,
you know, and if he gets called up, when he gets called to main roster, he's got to be booked as such.
Yeah,
and you know, no disrespect to anybody in Hit Row, they're just not booked as anybody that you as. They're not booked as serious contenders in the ring.
Right. Yeah.
And they lose. They lose all the time. Hit Row always loses when they're on TV, which isn't very often.
Yeah.
And it's a bummer because there's a lot of potential, I think, with Hit Row to do way more than they're doing. But the perception the audience has is that Hit Row's going to lose. If you have Carmelo join them, the perception that might have immediately Carmelo Hayes is, well, he's going to lose too. And you don't want that for Carmelo Hayes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you don't. No. He's got to come in. Could you, I mean, look, imagine the impact of him coming in and being the centerpiece of a group that includes the Street Profits, who've been around forever, very decorated. And you've got some fun stuff there. If Montez does want to split off, you know, there might be some tension. It's always fun when it's like intergroup tension. And then, like, you know, the big man Amos and MVP. I mean, dude, come in as a centerpiece figure, you know.
He debuts, wins Money in the Bank or something like that.
Right, exactly,
you know? A huge splash, something that will get people talking. Yeah, that's what you got to do with Carmelo. Alex Foster asks, what's something that Vince did better than Triple H? There has to be something.
So the problem with this is sort of what I just said a little bit earlier, and that's Triple H isn't reinventing anything. He's not reinventing the wheel here. He learned everything from Vince McMahon, and he's just a more, I don't know, he's seemingly, Triple H is a bit more in touch, and that might be because he has a willingness to listen to younger people. I mean, that's what Paul Heyman literally said. He's got obviously a sharp mind. Vince McMahon was declining, you know, over the past couple of years. It was clear there'd be rematch after rematch after rematch. And there was a depth problem because you get the same people over and over again. So that's why he brought in people like Hit Row. That's why he brought in, you know, a bunch of the other names, Emma and stuff. And so it's not like he's doing stuff much different in general than what Vince McMahon was doing. He's just doing it a lot better because he's sharper and younger and not so stuck in his own ways. He seemingly wants to do what's best for the story and the characters. And Vince wanted to do what's best for what he thought the characters were.
Yeah, speaking of characters. So the record isn't great for Vince developing characters. It's actually arguably pretty bad. But
lately, like over the past 10 years,
Well, then also like in the early 90s, everybody had a vocational gimmick for some reason. But in terms of developing characters that stood out, for the right or wrong reasons, Vince could do that. And the criticism I've had of Triple H booking, I haven't noticed it so much on main roster, but in NXT, was that everybody, from a character standpoint, everybody kind of just blended together. They were all badasses who love to fight.
Yeah.
You know, and when NXT had that sea change with 2.0, it seemed like they took the philosophy more in line with Vince's thinking, which is we need huge characters. Characters first and foremost. And again, the results aren't always great, but it seems Vince's perspective on valuing character maybe above all else is something that maybe he did better than Triple H.
Well, no, dude, you got a good point because look at, you know, NXT is doing, like, NXT creatively speaking, they've got some decent stuff going on right now. There's something to be said for the wide variety of characters that you have in NXT, and now they're all developing chemistry and the ratio of just really good wrestlers who have characters They're not afraid to be tongue in cheek. They're not afraid to be a little bit on the meta side. And it's starting to work out creatively speaking. NXT is a lot more fun now than it was a year ago. I mean, a year ago it was kind of hard to watch. Yeah, there's that. You know,
I feel like that was really pushing to find anything that Vince did better.
No, I think it's a solid point. I don't know. You look back at like the territories that Vince scooped up. He had an eye for talent.
Oh yeah,
like he knew who to choose. You know, I'm not saying Triple H doesn't, but I mean he really did build WWF with the best of the best, and he knew who the best of the best would be. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's going back 40 years, but still,
yeah,
that's something.
That is. Jonathan Vieira asks, "What's LA Knight's ceiling?"
So here at Going in Raw, there is no ceiling.
Ceiling.
He's ceiling free. The sky is the limit there.
I mean, even the sky is not a limit.
Even the sky is an incel who doesn't have the Kavorka of LA Knight.
You know, other galaxies, that might be the limit.
The multiverse, perhaps.
Perhaps.
But in that case, you're just dealing with other LA Knights. I think, honestly speaking, his ceiling is probably like Intercontinental U.S. champion. That's probably what his actual ceiling is. Because of what you said, the roster's deep. It's really deep. But at the same time, when you try to realistically think of, dude, I'll put it this way. Right now, the way I see it, probably mid-card, if he continues to get himself over the way he does, if he is allowed to do that, if you extrapolate that out to its logical conclusion, it might actually be a split title, top title guy. Not saying undisputed guy, but I'm saying WWE or Universal Champion. If the crowd just will completely get behind him, I think that's a possibility. I wouldn't, I never saw that. I didn't really see that as a possibility for Cody, but I think it might happen. And they're completely different people. But yeah. I don't know. I think it's a possibility.
I've said for a long time that wherever LA Knight, Eli Drake goes, he gets himself over.
Yeah.
Whether that's the intention, like he seemed like he was in NXT for depth. He was a good hand. That was supposed to be his role in NXT, and he got himself over.
Yeah.
Wherever he goes, he gets himself over. And yeah, you're right. If the crowd continues to get behind him, and there's this wave that leads LA Knight up the card, I wouldn't be surprised. If you look at it, as objectively as possible, you think, yeah, mid-card champion. That's probably the ceiling.
Could you?
But
yeah.
if he continues to forge this connection with the crowd,
yeah,
that it's deafening every time he comes out with, yeah,
I know.
Let me talk to you. Every single person in the arena, every single show is doing that.
Yeah.
That's something, and you can't
powerful.
ignore that.
It is powerful. Yeah. I mean, could you imagine if he wins Money in the Bank and you have, he wins Money in the Bank and you've got Cody as champion and they split the titles. Let's say he's lost one of them. He's WWE champion on the Raw.
Say, I don't know, Drew McIntyre.
No, he's on SmackDown. Sorry. Yeah. Who's on SmackDown? Drew?
Drew. Yeah,
Drew's not believable because he's too big. I'm always shocked when he loses anything. But let's say who on Raw, like Finn Balor. Let's say Finn Balor has it on Raw.
All right.
By the time, I don't know, November, end of the year rolls around. LA Knight wins Money in the Bank in June. Could you imagine, especially if Judgment Day keeps on building this heat, but they're still like, oh man, they're bad guys. Could you imagine LA Knight when his number one, he's got an all-time like entrance bumper, that sting when it happens, LA Knight, and it kicks in, dude, that stuff.
Yeah.
That crowd will explode if he catches it on somebody. It really will. Like between now and the end of the year, he's going to be hot.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have Vince sitting there holding him back because he thinks it's just the because it's not.
Yeah.
People like to see LA Knight, man.
I know. Yeah. Jen 1980 asks, once MJF's title reign comes to an end, could you guys see him being able to keep his top spot without a bit of a change up? So say he holds that title till the end of the year, as we expect. Maybe they do a story with him having the belt going into the bidding war of 2024. You know, whether, as you suspect, he may have already signed an extension or not. If he drops the belt, well, here's the thing: if he drops the belt and goes to WWE, he ain't changing anything. He's going to keep the same MJF formula, just going to WWE instead of AEW.
Yeah, so we'll have to tone it down a little bit, but it's not going to be a different persona.
The essence of MJF will remain the same. If he stays in AEW, I don't know if they're going to use the title loss as a means to pivot his character in a different direction. I mean, at its core, MJF will always be MJF. You know, at the core of the character is going to be the same. As we saw when he was kind of teasing the babyface run when he was feuding with Mox, that's what babyface MJF would look like.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't think it'd be drastically different. It would just be, you know, a slight deviation in terms of how he delivers promos, essentially.
Yeah.
But not a huge difference. I think what makes MJF is always going to be there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, he's not going to do a full-on repackage at any point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but I think we're going to see repackaging the way Jericho repackaged. How at the essence Jericho there, I mean, with some variation. At his essence, Jericho was always Jericho. It was just different takes on the Jericho character. I think that's what we'll get from MJF, because I think MJF is probably, you know, close with Jericho, and he probably understands he's only like, 25, 26 years old.
Yeah, he's pretty young.
He's going to have to change it up. And you can do that without losing the essence of your character. But I think that, you know, in order to remain fresh, he's gonna have to. That's for anybody. I mean, especially got it. You know, he'll you know, freshen up the way sort of like Randy Orton has freshened up over the years. Nothing drastic. The essence of Randy Orton's still there, but when he's interesting, it's because he changes it up a little bit. Frozen Tape says, do you ever see Dominic Mysterio being a top guy? He says, I feel like if he improves his in-ring style, he could be a star. Could Dom ever be a top guy?
It depends on how much he takes from ex-con Dom, this character, and translates that into whatever's next for him, because Dom as member of Judgment Day is probably not going to be a top guy,
right?
But if he has learned from his time as ex-con Dom, takes what worked, does more of that, takes what doesn't work, maybe got rid of that, sharpened up his in-ring work a bit, and found a way to infuse his in-ring work with his character a bit more. You know, so it doesn't seem like here's a guy going out there and doing moves, but there's a story being told because this character is wrestling. You know, he's young still. He's in his early 20s.
He's 25, yeah.
Mid-20s. To see the growth of his character from the heel turn to now has been pretty extraordinary. And if he can keep it up, I mean, I'm never going to say no. And given the right story and the right circumstance, there's like most people in WWE can be top of the card performers because they're all really good.
They're all really good, yeah.
So I would never discount anybody from being a top guy. But, you know, he's young. He still has a lot to learn. He's learned a lot. Just kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's too early to tell. I think the potential is clearly there, as we've seen. If you asked me before, you know, his Judgment Day stuff, I'd say like I don't see it. But he has shown me a lot in the with the Judgment Day stuff. If you continue to keep him around interesting people and he's doing interesting things, I think he has it in him. I think he's got the ingredients. Whether or not we'll ever see it, I don't know. But yeah, I think the ingredients are there. You know, it's just, I think it'll take a lot to unlock top guy potential. I think this is silly, but I think he probably physically wants to muscle up a little bit because that's just WWE stuff. But no, I love his work right now. He's only getting better every time he's on the mic. He elicits real crowd reactions. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's possible. I see, like, you know, if you look at other guys that aren't, you know, close to being top guys, like for example, Montez Ford, right?
Yeah.
You see it.
Oh yeah.
You can see it. So I would give a guy like Montez the leg up to be a top guy within 5 years more than Dom Mysterio. But or even, obviously like an Austin Theory who's around the same age as Dom. But yeah, I don't know. Dom is a more interesting character than Austin Theory.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
There's way more going on with Dom as opposed to Austin Theory.
Yeah,
and that's the whole point of the storyline was John Cena.
Yeah, this deadbeat dad stuff is absolutely fantastic for him. It really unlocks some stuff. Yeah,
heel that makes good points is one of the most surefire ways to make yourself an interesting character.
Absolutely, 1,000%. Yeah.
We got one more question here before we hit the lightning round. Blake Whitehouse says, with all the wrestling news that happens daily, what do you do to determine what makes the cut in the podcast? He says, for example, why did you not talk about Jerry Lawler being hospitalized a few weeks ago?
So one thing we try to do is stick with stories that have a bearing on the world of wrestling now. And we don't endeavor to talk about everything because not everything needs our comment. Does Jerry Lawler going into the hospital need us to talk about it? No, not really, because it doesn't really affect what's happening in wrestling now. Obviously, even though there are aspects of Lawler, in his commentary or whatever that I take issue with, obviously I want him to not be in the hospital. Obviously I want him to be a healthy, happy individual. Mm-hmm. I don't really feel it necessary to talk about him going to the hospital. Like, why do you need to hear us talk about that? What significance does it have? What relevance does it have to the world of professional wrestling?
And also, it's one of those topics that we mentioned the news, and as you just said, wish him the best, and there's not really much conversation to be had,
right? Yeah,
other than reporting the news and wishing Lawler the best in recovery. Mm-hmm. As far as what stories make the show, it's generally stuff that we feel like would resonate with our audience, and part of it is the marketing aspect of going in Raw. We'll look at on the thumbnail and the title, what we think people are going to be interested based on the title and thumbnail, that they'll click and watch the video.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Especially for what makes the cut as the top story or two.
Yeah.
It's, whatever news of the day that seems to be most on the mind of wrestling fans, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to prioritize.
Yeah, right.
And, there means that some stories that might be of interest to us or some portion of our audience, but we don't think might be as relevant to a larger audience, might not necessarily make the show on a daily basis, but that's why I think we like having the question threads, because sometimes people will ask questions about those news stories, and then we can talk about those then and cover some of those. And
we're always down to do that. Like that. That's why we have those question threads, because it's for stuff. If you guys want us to, give our thoughts about something specific, then, 9 times out of 10, if you drop it in the comments or if you drop it in the question thread, we'll answer it. We'll be, okay, well, let's talk about this really quick. If somebody said, what do you make of Jerry Lawler being in the hospital? I hope he's doing well. I don't know what else you want me to say.
Yeah, sorry to hear he's in the hospital. Hope he does well. Yeah.
I mean, there are certain things. Like, for example, we didn't really talk about recently, John Cena had some words to say about, he was asked about Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And his quote was, I don't know what the word is. Underwhelming. I'll put it that way. And there's some topics I don't know. I don't really feel like talking about. And so I won't unless I'm asked about it, in which case I'll give you my opinion. But yeah, like when it comes to, the personal lives of wrestlers, oftentimes we don't really dive into that. So-and-so broke up with so-and-so. Okay, well, does that affect what we see on the screen in pro wrestling?
Unless it affects what's on the screen in the wrestling ring.
Right. Yeah, we're not wrestling news now, who just seems to make up stuff.
Yeah.
Like Rhea Ripley and Dominic actually having a relationship. But now apparently Dominic is moving on to Charlotte Flair.
Oh, because of what he said to her on SmackDown.
Because during the promo, according to Wrestling News Now, you could see that they were making eyes at each other.
Oh,
that they were madly in love. Yeah.
Wow.
All the tea over there at Wrestling News Now.
Oh, my goodness. Apparently. All right, let's rapid fire lightning round some of these questions. What do you say?
I think that's a great idea. I'm on the YouTube. Are you on the Patreon?
I am on the Patreon, yes.
Okay. Zyshawn Moore, how long do you think it is until the Judgment Day is draped in gold? That means all of it. Mid-card, top title, tag titles, women's title.
I don't know if that ever happens.
Don't think it ever happens either.
JR Jr., what's a piece of wrestling memorabilia you'd love to own?
Oh, if it's anything?
Yeah.
I don't know, like fucking Bruno's title, one of his titles.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Winged Eagle title.
Stone Cold's Broken Skull one, or the Smoking Skull. Yeah. Benoit Richer says, when do you think Athena will join the Outcasts? I think it's a possibility. I don't know when, but I think it's a possibility.
It's something they should definitely do.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Should definitely do. Imagine if the Garcia twins, formerly the Bella twins, make their way to AEW to join the Outcasts. I mean, if they start expanding that story, that'd be pretty neat. No,
I agree, and it leads to War Games.
Yeah,
it'd be good.
Or Blood and Guts.
Blood and Guts. Yeah.
Stan asks, can you think of any wrestlers with relatively long careers who were only a face or heel? I mean, Cena comes to mind because, once he turned face, he was face. Yeah.
Wait, what was the question?
Can you think of wrestlers with relatively long careers who were only face or heel? Stan mentions Steamboat.
Okay, yeah.
So I think Steamboat was only a babyface.
Yeah. Yeah, Cena's kind of the thing. God, I don't know. RVD, Die Hard Homer says RVD. I think he went back and forth. I think there was a bad RVD.
Yeah, Die Hard Homer says Ray. I think Ray, for the most part, since he went out, once he went to WB, has been a babyface.
Jeff Hardy? Was Jeff ever a bad guy? If he was, it probably wasn't very effective.
I mean, I kind of feel like Itchweed kind of transcends faces or heels,
Itchweed and Jeff Hardy are the same guy?
Yeah.
Scott Martin says, put together a jobber faction you think would get over. Jobbers. Who are jobbers anymore? Hit Row. They're not over.
Mm-mm.
Although I do think, okay, you take a Top Dollar out of there. I think Top Dollar's got it. I just think that Hit Row ain't like him. I don't think that like really plays to who he really is as an individual. I just don't. Like, he seems, whenever I see him in anything that isn't WWE, he always seems like a fairly charming guy, and Hit Row just doesn't unlock that for him.
Yeah.
Oh, Maximum Male Model. It's already done.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see here. Addis Davis Jr. says, who are people in NXT that need to be called up? We actually have. I'm going to push on that one because we did that on an overrun a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I'm putting together like an audio cut of that I want to hand to Rob and be like, hey, can you turn this into something?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, for like a produce thing. And so far, the audio is really good. Like, I've cut out all of our and pauses and stuff. And it flows really, really well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it might be the template for something new.
There we go. Luis Ariza asks, push one, Ring of Honor one, and fire one. You got Eddie Kingston, you got Andrade, and you got the Redeemer Miro.
Push is Eddie, Ring of Honor, Miro, and then what's the other one? Release one?
Yeah.
Andrade, he can go to WWE.
You push Miro. Sorry, you Ring of Honor Eddie Kingston.
Yeah, they've already done that. I never get to see Eddie Kingston anymore.
Well, you just got to watch Ring of Honor. And yeah, fire Andrade. I'm sorry. I like Andrade a lot. But
oh, yeah, but he's going to go to WWE.
Yeah, I know.
Or AAA.
I want Miro on my TV again. Damn it.
Hey, get rid of Miro. He'll go to WWE. No, that's it. You release Miro. He goes to WWE. You get to see him on TV. You push Eddie Kingston, and then you Ring of Honor Andrade.
I want the Redeemer Miro. I don't know if they're going to have him do that in WWE.
He'll Triple H loves the Redeemer.
He'll be Rusev again.
No way, man. Triple H loves the Redeemer.
High Plains Drifter asks, is Tony Khan writing all these new shows and TV as well? If so, who out there not working for another company could help him write? Freddie Prinze Jr. I know he's trying to build up his own promotion, but if that doesn't happen, if that falls through,
there ain't enough. There's not enough like cable TV wrestlers out there for another promotion. There's not enough cable TV out there for a promotion.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what he's going to do with that.
I know. I mean, MLW is a relatively established promotion, and they seem to be bouncing around their TV distribution all over the place. They're
Right,
like on Vice for 2 weeks.
If ML it was like Reels now,
Yes, Reels. Yeah,
and
but there's
that's
an issue
going
because
away.
they're on Peacock. Yeah,
that's going away. Yeah, no. If MLW can't do it, nobody, because MLW is pretty good.
yeah, they got some good talent there.
If they can't do it, nobody's gonna.
But I guess the idea of, based on what Freddie was saying, that he was trying to get like names. Although one of the names he wanted was Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross, I like Karrion well enough, but as a performer. But I don't know if that's a name you could attach to a burgeoning wrestling property and be like, TV deal, please.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So we got this last one here from Nikyle. It's about NXT, and I haven't finished the whole thing, so I don't know how much I can comment on it. But he says, when he saw Grayson Waller in his house in kayfabe, why didn't Johnny Gargano call the police?
That's not how people work things out in the pro wrestling business.
No. They handle the business themselves.
Yeah. I don't know if there's an intruder in my house. Yeah, I'd call 911 probably before I pick up my baseball bat. Probably, I'll do the same at the same time. But I don't know. I might just barricade me and my family, and you don't want it. What if they have a gun and they shoot you?
Yeah.
You want to barricade yourself and then hopefully 911 gets there first, but otherwise you get out the baseball bat and the knife.
I got a machete.
Even better. It's like a baseball bat and knife.
And a knife, I know.
It's all in one. That's good. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for Ask Owen and Raw. Thanks, everybody, for all your great questions. We appreciate it. Yeah, you can ask questions here at Ask Owen and Raw. Hit up the Patreon, patreon.com/Steven Larson at $5 and up, or click join there on the YouTube to become a YouTube channel member. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.